the quarterback controversy may have come to an end in Norman, but maybe there's a new controversy brewing on the defensive side of the ball. Welcome in the Boomer Breakdown. My name is Jason Ray, taking you through the next hour, talking about everything Oklahoma TCU related. Thanks everybody for joining here, or that will be joining here late on a Saturday night. So my apologies for having this a little bit later than normal. I think it's about 40 minutes after the final here. But I'm actually on vacation in Branson, so doing this live from a hotel room. So please bear with me with the lighting and if the internet's not up to snuff. But overall, I think a lot of positives, a lot more positive that you would take away from this game than you've seen, in the last couple of weeks. I think first and foremost, all of the discussion, at least the majority of the discussion this week, was around the quarterback room, with the way Caleb Williams played in certainly the second half against Texas, and then what was moving forward. Would Lincoln move to more of a lot of questions, exactly how he would approach this? Would it be more of a 2-quarterback system? Would he play, would he start Caleb Williams? Would he start Spencer Rattler? Would with both play maybe a little bit in the first quarter? So I think that was emphatically answered by starting Caleb Williams, and then he just played tremendously, about as good as you could ask for. In terms of a kid making his first start. I believe it's the first start for a true freshman quarterback at the University of Oklahoma since 1985 is what I remember seeing since Jamal Holloway. So, looking at the numbers for him, 5 total touchdowns, excuse me, 18 out of 25, 295 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, 9 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. 5 total touchdowns, over 361 yards of total offense by him. Kennedy Brooks played extremely well as well. 20 carries, 153 yards, and a touchdown there. Mike Woods, Jaden Hazelwood, 6 catches, 56 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, offensively, it looks like Oklahoma has started to right the ship a bit. Obviously, we're not going to come on here and bash Spencer Rattler at all. This isn't what this is going to be about. At least from my perspective, I think it's pretty safe to say that, barring injury, Rattler probably will not play another meaningful snap for Oklahoma. You would all but assume that he either transfers or goes into the portal. Transfers or declares for the NFL draft after the season's over. But who knows, with injuries, or Oklahoma has a rough November. Maybe he gets in and plays a little bit if Caleb struggles on some of these games on the road. But I think what you saw tonight was only a kid that's going to get better, and he played about as well as you possibly could. Had 2 touchdowns dropped in the end zone that could have made his stats just kind of through the roof overall. But still, like I said, from a first time to start, you couldn't really ask for much better in Oklahoma's 52-31 win over TCU. As we talked about, offensive line played pretty well. 2 games in a row where Oklahoma has had over 200 yards rushing, with Kennedy Brooks really just kind of hitting his stride this year, running the ball really, really well, running the ball hard. And Eric Gray we saw him get his first touchdown of the season as well for Oklahoma. So I think those are a lot of the really positive things. And I know there's going to be a lot of negative talk just in terms of the secondary, which is fair, I think, tonight, just based on the way they performed. But they were put into tough situations. Billy Bowman had to play, the entire game at corner. Delaren Turner-Yell was out. Willie Washington obviously has been out. And then DJ Graham goes out early in the game with in the concussion protocol. So now you got 3 brand new starters in the back end of the secondary. This week, and they struggled a little bit, as you would expect. So I know a lot of people will be really, really down, really frustrated just about the way that the secondary played. But you got to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt to three guys that really didn't expect to play, at least in that position. Obviously, Billy Bowman had been playing nickel for all of the season until this week, when he kind of had to be thrust back into action, moving over to the corner. So yeah, a lot of things that Oklahoma needs to get solidified, and I think a lot of that is just injuries. Getting some of those kids back. You would expect. I think you wouldn't expect DJ Graham to be out for a long period of time, maybe a game, with a concussion, depending on how bad it is. Hamstring for DTY. Not sure how long that's going to continue to sideline. He tried to give it a go against Texas, didn't. Played, I think, one possession, maybe two possessions, and then was back out. And then obviously didn't give it a go. Now, I think the good thing that you look at for Oklahoma right now, both on the offensive and defensive side, as you got really 3 weeks here to improve and get ready for your November run. So Oklahoma has Kansas in Lawrence next week, 11 a.m. ESPN. Then you have Texas Tech. I'm sorry. Then you have a bye. I believe there's a bye week between Kansas and Texas Tech. No, I'm sorry. It's after Texas Tech. You got Kansas, then you come home against Texas Tech, then you have a bye week, and then the real kind of murderer's row of the schedule comes with, with Baylor, with Iowa State, and with Oklahoma State. Probably 3 of the best teams in the Big 12 right now. You play all in a row there, and two of them are on the road. So it's an opportunity for them to get healthy a little bit, an opportunity for Caleb Williams to get a little bit more continuity in the offense as well. So I think he is. I think he's going to be pivotal. He played, to be honest, he played much better than I really anticipated him playing tonight. Showed really, really good flashes against Texas, obviously, but I think he was much better today. I think he was much more consistent on the. He was much more consistent in the passing game. He was much more in command of the offense, and so he's only going to get better and better as these games go by, which is perfect, in a perfect situation for Oklahoma just to have these next 3 weeks to just constantly improve. And sometimes practice can be even better than a game, specifically when you're trying to get some kids back from injury, which you still got. You got Jalen Redmond on the defensive line that still will certainly be back, I would assume, by that November time frame. And you still got DTY and hopefully DJ Graham's back, and so you got hopefully you're kind of playing with shooting with a loaded gun, so to speak, before before that big part of the schedule starts coming out, because you got Oklahoma's in the driver's seat right now for the Big 12, to at the very least play for the Big 12 championship. Now you've got just a monumental game in the Big 12 next week with Oklahoma State and Iowa State. Iowa State's playing a little better. Oklahoma State is playing really, really good defense, especially on the defensive side. They held Casey Thompson in check today. They played a lot better, on Bijan Robinson towards the end of the game as well. So a lot of good stuff coming. And for those of you, we'll promote it big time this week, throughout the week, every single day, starting tomorrow. But we're going to do like a marathon podcast next Saturday, starting probably 8 a.m. and going through the rest of the day. I'm gonna, we'll be live during the Oklahoma game, obviously. That starts at 11, so 11 to 2:30 we'll be live, kind of talking about just watching the game with all of you guys, and exactly seeing how the game goes, and talking about just giving the instant analysis as the game goes. But then we'll have some guests, some Oklahoma guests throughout the day. We'll have some guests from around the country. We've got some. I've got someone from Penn State lined up. I've got someone from UCLA lined up. We've got someone from West Virginia. I've got someone that is really close to the Tennessee program. Used to follows Army real well. So Army has an interesting game with Wake Forest. So got some Georgia coverage. So we should have you covered all across the country next week for our marathon podcast. So more to come on that, but just make sure you join us next Saturday all day. And we'll go through that just for something fun, something different for the week, the weekend that Oklahoma plays Kansas, which is obviously not as big of a game as you would expect. So let's go. Let's go to some of the questions, and then some of the questions and comments, and then we'll take everything that you guys have. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you can get all of our stuff after this podcast is over. We'll have some it'll post probably about 10-15 minutes after we finish the podcast here as well. So welcome all your comments here. Jesse, starters out or not, our defense has to play better if we are to win a playoff game. Absolutely. I think this team is not necessary on the defensive side of the ball. I think the one thing, Jesse, that we would talk about is I think a month ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we would probably say that the offense wasn't really ready. I think we've seen a lot of improvement on the offensive line. Obviously, Caleb Williams kind of helps that a little bit, but I think when you look at the offense in totality, I think right now they're where you would like them to be. I think they are a team that could certainly play and win a playoff game and maybe even challenge for a national championship. Obviously, Georgia's a different animal on the defensive side of the ball that Oklahoma would have to contend with. But still, to your point, Jesse, could win a playoff game. I think the defense isn't really where it needs to be. Kind of on the back end, more importantly than anything on the back end. I know that they didn't get a lot of pressure defensively with their front seven tonight, but the secondary has to be able to cover a little bit better. And I'm not, I know there's a lot of people here that will come on here and talk about how bad the Oklahoma defense was tonight, and it's just something that I'm not as concerned with right now. If Oklahoma played at this level with all of their starters in, maybe I would be singing a little bit of a different tune. But right now, with so many people out, I'm not as concerned. I'm not as concerned right there. So key is to get some of those guys back, get them healthy, and get them ready for the stretch run. So I think what you're seeing, Jesse, is you're seeing a lot of these teams kind of fall. Fall right now. You've got obviously Alabama kind of came back strong today. I think it was 49-9 victory over Mississippi State. But you got Iowa that was exposed a little bit in their home loss to Purdue, so 24-7. So you've got Oklahoma that probably moves up to 3 right now. They're in a good spot. They just got to continue to get better, much better on the defensive side of the ball, and then continue to kind of fine tune that offense as well. Mr. John K. Williams, you should be a real national contender now. I think they've, Mr. John, as I just mentioned, I think they took away one side of the ball from a kind of a liability perspective. Oklahoma was good, has been really good the last 2 games, over 50 points in the last 2 games, combined 55 and 52 tonight. So I think the Sooner offense is where you would want them to be. I think, as interesting as it is, I mean, it's going to be pivotal for them to keep that momentum and keep getting better next week. I know it's easy when you play Kansas. No one's going to be there. It's an 11 a.m. game on the road. No one really cares about this. Probably cares about this game, but those are the games where you see what you're made of. To see, can you go through and beat a team that's not any good at all, and can you do what you need to do? So I think that's going to be pivotal for both sides of the ball, and maybe Oklahoma's defense and specifically the secondary gets a little confidence next week against a team like Kansas. I would expect if you give up more than about 14 to 17 points to Kansas, that's not a good performance. So I think Oklahoma needs to continue to get better. Open field tackling is still an issue, and coverage in the backside is still an issue. I believe Dugan had his career best day in terms of yardage, in terms of touchdown passes. So something that Oklahoma has to continue to work through, but it's no time to panic. I don't think it's anything, as I mentioned, if they were doing this against their Oklahoma starters, then it would be a big area of concern. However, with the injuries and putting kids in positions that maybe they're not necessarily ready for, is a problem. So, but get some of those guys back, and let's see what that looks like a little bit. Jim, no pressure. Yeah, I think that's one thing that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, and um, uh, I think is something that's going to be of concern. They've got to be able to get pressure on the quarterback again. They've got to get that masks some of the struggles that you have in the back end of the secondary if you can be in a position to get consistent quarterback and get consistent quarterback pressure. And if you're not, you got to find a way to produce some of that pressure through exotic blitzes, stunts, games up front, and stuff like that. So do you think Spencer Rattler loses a $50 million deal? So I have to make a little bit of a retraction on that. This was some information that I was provided. I don't think it was correct, based on some things that I've kind of been hearing and some other stuff. I think it was not anywhere near that much. It wasn't the millions, but it wasn't 50 million. So some of the things that I've heard is he has been, and maybe it's going to start dwindling a little bit, but he was right there with Bryce Young from Alabama in terms of earning potential there in the millions. I think it was more about his $50 million deal was more about his potential earnings from an NIL perspective, not necessarily the deals that he has worth right now. So, my apologies. I'll come in here and tell you tell you guys if I was wrong. So, I was certainly wrong on that aspect. So, but like I said, he still is right there. One of the most, at least up until this past week, was one of the most, had NIL deals worth the most. So Scott Parker, Texas should schedule Tulsa. I think Texas has played Tulsa in the past, but but I think it's interesting. I came away from that game last weekend, the Red River Shootout, thinking Texas is really, really good. I think Oklahoma just played extremely well in the second half, which I still think the latter part of that is true. However, when you look at the way Texas played specifically in the fourth quarter again, I think they have concerns with being able to finish. I think when they had Oklahoma down, obviously a bunch, 21 points in the first half, 18, I believe, at one point in the second half as well. So I think Texas consistently being able to finish, I think is a concern right now, and they're not quite where they need to be. So this team's a 4-loss team. Looking at it right now, they still have Iowa State to play. So right now they're a 3-loss team. Could potentially get to a 4-loss team with Iowa State left to go. I'll have to go look back and look at their schedule, but I know they do have a bye week this coming week. So defense is injured. We had young guys playing. Yeah, I think the one thing, Joel, that I would say is even though the young guys were playing, there wasn't a lot of young guys that were able to make plays on the ball. Josh Eaton made a play on the ball, and it was just kind of went through his hand. And the Quentin Johnston, I think the receiver from TCU, was just kind of took it away from him. So yeah, I think that's one thing that that these young kids need to kind of understand a little bit more, is just them not only being in position but making plays on the football as well. Agrees plays money. Agree his play is money motivated. Yeah, Wolf. I don't necessarily think. I don't necessarily think that that's the case. Like I said, don't really want to come in here and I'm not going to bash Spencer Rattler. He's still a kid trying to do everything that he can to get on the field and play and be in a better spot but I still think this kind of ends this, the quarterback confusion, quarterback controversy, if you will. Or Caleb Williams, when you put the last 6 quarters together, the best 6 quarters of offense Oklahoma has played all year, not even close, even if you want to count that Western Carolina game. So for whatever reason, he clicks a little better with the wide receivers. He's more liked in the locker room. Whatever it is, it's something that Oklahoma's going to go with, obviously. And you've got, and the good thing is you have him for the last half of this year and then 2 more years after that, guaranteed. So I think he's the guy. He's definitely the guy, and I think he brings a little bit of a mix of Baker and Kyler um, to the sidelines for Oklahoma. You've got a kid in Caleb Williams that hasn't played a lot still, but he has a lot of leadership abilities. He has a lot of moxie, and then from a leadership perspective, he reminds you a lot of Baker just in terms of what he does on the sidelines, pumping all the guys up, going to the special teams, going to the defense, doing a lot of extra things to show that he's that leader and kind of win over that locker room. And then some of the runs that you've seen him make, specifically that long 42-yard touchdown run that he had tonight, really had a lot of Kyler-esque in terms of the way he moves. So, he gives defenses a lot to look at and a lot to think about. And Gary Patterson had to come into this game knowing that Caleb Williams was going to start and play a lot. I think a lot of us knew that was going to happen. We would have been really kind of surprised if that didn't happen, and it did. So, so I don't think you can use the excuse that defenses weren't prepared for, and they're not sure what the blueprint's kind of been there for these other teams. They're going to run some of the same stuff that they ran with Kyler, but more. I think fundamentally they'll probably run. The offense will look much like it did with Jalen Hurts a couple of years ago. So, which is not bad at all. One of the I think the only knock that you could ever have on Jalen Hurts is that he fumbled the ball a little bit. So he played really, really well. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL for Philadelphia. So he's a really, really great player. But yeah, no, I think it's just a difference maker. And Spencer's going to find, he's going to find somewhere he'll finish out. Obviously, the rest of the season here in Norman, at least I would expect him to continue to fight and be ready at any moment. Who knows? Just like in the Jalen Hurts to a Tagovailoa situation, Jalen Hurts was needed in the SEC championship game. So who knows? Spencer Rattler may be needed, whether it's like we saw in Texas in that 2-point conversion, or it just may be in different situations. Hopefully, he gets to play next week in mop-up duty against Kansas. But yeah, I think he will. He will be the guy moving forward. But Spencer Rattler will be probably needed at some point. My man Monty, thanks for joining, brother. Caleb is that dude. He's a different kid, and I didn't get to watch the game as intently as I would like. I know Kirk Herbstreit kind of postured him as a Heisman candidate even this year. Wouldn't be surprised if he can kind of continue to play well, where he can get his name up there a little bit. I know it sounds crazy, right? Like he's played 6 quarters of meaningful football and already being a Heisman candidate. But I think the thing that you take away from this season from a Heisman candidacy perspective is, there's not been a lot of guys that have really separated themselves. Bryce Young, Matt Corral are probably 2 of the front runners right now, but you've got Bijan Robinson that still played well, 130 yards I think today. Kenneth Walker III for Michigan State only had about 80 yards, so he has the opportunity to insert himself and get himself back into that Heisman trophy discussion, which is kind of crazy to think about as well. So yeah, I definitely and I agree, Monty. No quarterback controversy at all right now. I think that discussion, that little that narrative, I don't really love to use the word narrative, but that narrative is it's no longer there. This is Caleb Williams' team coming going forward. You could have made an argument had Caleb struggled a little bit tonight, but yeah, I think it's definitely Caleb's team going forward. If he hadn't won over the team before tonight, he definitely did tonight. So the lighting in this hotel room is bad, guys. I moved this desk around several different ways. This was the best lighting that I felt like we could do. My wife actually told me, help me out on this a little bit just to be able to get the lighting in a better spot. But so yeah, I promise next week for our marathon pod next Saturday we will I'll have better lighting back in my own house. So, but thanks for that. I think that's a compliment, Switter. So thanks for the welcome to the adventures of Caleb Williams. Yep, we've got it black just here for the next 2.5 years. I think, and I think it's going to be great. I mean, I think this kid has all the potential in the world, and he has all the talent, and he has all the intangibles, and he has the it factor that that you need. You definitely need. Yeah, he was outstanding tonight. I think one of the one thing that you can say about even though Burkish missed a kick tonight, I think Oklahoma has the best um, kicker punter combination in the country, and then I mean they'll both be back next year as well. So you got that for the next year and a half as well. So yeah, I mean he's a weapon. I think especially as you get into some of these tight games, he will continue to be a weapon. Whether it be Baylor, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, or even a Big 12 championship and/or a playoff game if Oklahoma's fortunate enough to get there. I think you've got that opportunity. So yeah, no, he's a big weapon for the Sooners, no doubt. Ryan, thanks for the comment, man. I appreciate you here. Always a trooper in here with us. I thought Josh Eaton showed some potential. He got beat a couple of times, but he's in position at least. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair comment. I need to go back and watch the tape a little bit more just to get a good kind of foundation for the way the defensive backs played. But yeah, I think definitely on that play he was there, and he was certainly in position to make that play for Oklahoma, just wasn't able to make it. So I think that's half the battle is making plays on the ball. I think that's one of the things that Oklahoma really struggled with under Mike Stoops is really their cornerbacks being in position and really just making plays on the ball. So it's something that they struggled with and something that they will need to continuously get better to get better on if you're an Oklahoma fan. No doubt about it whatsoever. So Graham was in the concussion protocol. I think he played early on, and I don't remember when it was that he got hit. But obviously the trainer saw something in him from a concussion perspective that didn't look good for the trainers. Um, but I think concussions are something that you can usually get over in a week, depending on exactly how bad how bad it is. But I think hopefully he'll be back at least by Texas Tech. They should be able to manage without against Kansas. You would hope, but I think at least by Texas Tech he should be back. You guys are great. It's 11:30 at night. Got 47 on the line. I appreciate you guys sticking in here with me. And we'll talk about what we're going to do next week here in just a little bit, just so you guys are all on board and are all kind of get an idea. Scott, this is I wanted to highlight this comment because this is excellent. I think Kennedy Brooks reminds a lot of Emmitt Smith, and this is me and my dad watching the Texas game last week. This is a comment that he made um, as well that he's not incredibly fast. He's not the strongest guy in the world, but he's got incredible vision, and he just knows where to be. He knows how to find those holes. So I think he has a chance at the next level. Obviously, I'm not saying anything about him leaving early after this year. That'll kind of take care of itself. But I think, I think he has the opportunity to have a good career in the NFL just because of that vision and just because of that elusiveness. Always makes the right cut, hits the right hole, and things like that. So that's a very good analogy. Uh, yeah, no, I think that's fair, Monty. The only thought that I have is who else, who else are they going to going to put out there with everybody. I mean, Latrell McCutcheon is a guy that played a lot and needs to play a lot. Josh Eaton is a guy. Jaden Davis is a guy. But I think Monty. The only thing that I can think of, because I do know that Billy Bowman took some snaps at cornerback this week in practice, so I know that they had prepared him. I think more so just because of how bad Jaden Davis was in coverage last week against Texas. So I thought I thought it might be one of those things where he got to play some. Obviously, he was thrust into action, maybe a little bit more than he probably would. Probably would have. So I mean, that's why it's so important to that's why it's so important to get some of those guys back. Logan, Caleb Williams will be unstoppable in the playoffs. Let's just go one step at a time, Logan. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Oklahoma's in good position right now. They just went out. Heck, they just went out. They could vault themselves up to number one in the country, right? Because some of these teams, Oklahoma, it's hard to envision a situation where Cincinnati loses a game going forward. However, Oklahoma and some of these other teams will play tougher opponents. So, wouldn't be at all surprised to see Oklahoma even jump Cincinnati. Probably not this week. They played really well. 56-21 victory over Central Florida. So, I think they'll get there if they continue to play well. Definitely. Do you think it's a coincidence that the line improved so much when Caleb came in? This is a very interesting question, Ryan. I think one of the things that I noticed watching this game last week against Texas is and I rewatched the game. I watched the game like 3 times. And I noticed that the offensive line played a little bit better with him in the game. And I think part of it is the fact that Caleb's ability to run, ability to not be as much of a statue back there as Spencer Rattler was and is. I think that helped things, but I think the team just likes him more. I mean, and like I said, there's nothing. This is nothing bad, and this is not bashing Spencer Rattler at all. I think he's a kid. He's a kid that these other kids respect and like because of the leadership ability. And I'm not saying anything about NIL or anything like that. I just think they respect the work that he's continued to put in over and over, and I think they respect what he's done within inside those walls a little bit more than what Spencer Rattler has done. So I think a little bit more likable. They just want to play maybe a little bit better for him. So I think we've seen obviously that massive improvement over the last 2 games. Still, they still aren't incredibly talented in terms of what we've seen in the past, but they're good enough, I think, for Oklahoma to have a really good offense and good enough for Oklahoma to run the table here with these next 5 games. Why is Marcus Major not getting any carries? I think that's interesting. And I wonder, Josh, if the reason really is more so just around he maybe wasn't practicing as much. I don't know if it's an issue with him, necessarily being out of shape, but learning the offense and maybe just kind of out of it a little bit. If Oklahoma plays as well as we think that they will next week, I would certainly say that he'll get some carries. But I think that's the only thing that I can think of. He hasn't been involved in the team at a high level as much as possible. Eric Gray was a bit overhyped. I don't necessarily think that's it. I just think that Kennedy Brooks is really playing at an extremely high level now, and it's just hard to take him off the field. I know that Eric Gray did get his first touchdown today, but other than that, I know he wasn't extremely. I think he's going to be way more valuable in the pass game this year for Oklahoma going down the stretch than maybe he will in the running game. So I think you'll continue to see Kennedy Brooks get the bulk of the carries out of the backfield, but then you'll see You'll see him as a change of pace, but like I said, he's really, really good out of the back, catching the ball out of the backfield. So, Cam, I hate to put you on blast like this, but you literally put it on the chat, so I'm going to display it here. Um, all right, so we'll move on from there, and I'll just go there. I'm glad you at least made it back after your little break. Let's see, just knocking off Russ. You've been playing scout team. Yeah. So, good follow up, Monty. And I think that's probably where it's at for Marcus Major at this point. Absolutely, Josh. Keep joining. I appreciate the questions coming in. Good stuff. So, looking at some of the things around the Big 12 and really just kind of around the country today. Like I said, we talked about Oklahoma State, 32-24 victory over Texas. Really good performance. I think the thing that I'm most impressive about Oklahoma State is their defense, specifically in the back end. They confused Casey Thompson all day long, threw a couple of interceptions. I think right now you got to put Oklahoma State as the best defensive team in the country. Still, if I'm Oklahoma State, I don't completely trust Spencer Sanders. He made a couple of mistakes, got hot late. I still wonder if he's the type of player that can win a Big 12 championship game, can beat Oklahoma in Bedlam. So, I mean, that remains to be seen. I just, on the outside looking in, that's just a guy that I don't completely trust to do what you need to do to win a championship. But the defense will keep him we'll keep him around, and we'll keep him we'll give him opportunities. I think Baylor's a team that's a lot better. It's just they're bowl eligible. They won 38-24 over BYU today. Only loss was at Oklahoma State, and that close low scoring loss to Oklahoma State, and then Iowa State. Let's not forget about Texas Tech, 41-14 victory over Kansas. In the typical bye that every Big 12 team gets once a year. And then Iowa State beating Kansas State 33-20. I kind of thought Iowa State would start playing better, and they have here. Really, I wouldn't say dominated the game, but played well against Kansas State. So. Good performance out of Breece Hall, 30 carries, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns for Hall in that game. So very interesting, week in the Big 12. And then when you look at next week, obviously you have Oklahoma and Kansas. You've got in kind of a couple below the radar games: West Virginia at TCU, Kansas State at Texas Tech, and then you've got Oklahoma State going to Iowa State. So big win, big game. If Oklahoma State wins that game, you can almost stamp them in terms of a Big 12 championship game appearance. They would have to do a whole lot to lose that. Now Iowa State has the opportunity to get themselves back into the playoff, or to the Big 12 championship race should they get back should they win that game against Oklahoma State. They've got another tough game, which initially looks like a tough game at West Virginia, maybe not as much, but obviously they go to come to Norman. Oklahoma plays them as well. So yeah, interesting games in the Big 12, and then we'll get to all of that across the country next week. Ryan, really, really happy for that kid. Just so happy for him, all the controversy that he's went through, just in terms of, a big 5-star commitment for Oklahoma, hasn't lived up to his kind of capabilities, or what people thought he would be. Had the unfortunate injury last year, tried to come back, wasn't quite ready, wasn't there, and I think having him and just having that 3 touchdown performance today was just really big for him and his confidence. And I think he's one of the guys that has openly talked about the lack of kind of cohesiveness that he's had with Spencer this year. So I think I think having Caleb there has maybe helps him a little bit more, and just getting the ball downfield a little bit, and just he looked great tonight. So very happy for him, definitely. Megan, well, thanks for joining the pod. I don't know if this is excited to hear me talk or if you're angry with me about something. So please expound. But love to have you here. Thank you, Megan. Cam, definitely need those guys back, especially DTY and Woody. I think having if you have DTY, Woody, and if you can get DJ Graham back, I think that's really helpful. I think Cordell helps from a depth perspective on the back end with Billy Bowman, moving back to his more, I think probably more his natural position, which is the nickelback as well. Yes, Tijuana, 3 years of Caleb. So you got the rest of this year, and then, I mean, at least two more, depending on how those, if those next two, those next 2 years go the way we thought they, the way we think they will, um, then yes, absolutely. Um, you've got a kid that's going to play a lot of good football for Oklahoma over the next couple of years for the Sooners. And and I think one thing to take out of this is, I think coming into the season, I think a lot of us assumed that Spencer Rattler was going to have just a great year, and I think he would go off to the NFL after this year, maybe even win a Heisman. So, you know, you hate to assume what's going to happen with some of these kids, but yeah, I mean, I think everything keeping his head on straight. I think Oklahoma will, he'll continue to he'll have two really good seasons for Oklahoma and do a lot of good things. Absolutely, and I think a lot of the recruiting is going to be interesting. My man Monty had talked about this on, I tweeted this out a little bit on Twitter this week, talking about maybe Oklahoma getting some wide receivers into the 2022 class, because right now we don't have any. So that Caleb Williams effect, getting some of those kids back will be interesting. So yeah, Monty, as you talked about this, I'm kind of looking at, and it's like it doesn't look good for Texas right now. I'd forgotten they have next week off, but then they go to Baylor and to Iowa State. So this could be a 5-loss team. So I think it's interesting. They fired, uh, gosh, I can't. His name's escaping me right now. Only lost. I think they lost 3 games last year, all by 7 points or less. And they've had 2 double-digit leads in the last 2 weeks. Tom Herman, sorry, and had double-digit leads in the last 2 weeks, and still wasn't able to complete the win in either one of them. So I'm afraid that it might get worse before it gets better with those two games coming up. David Curtis, thanks for joining in, brother. I appreciate the comment and the question, I should say. What can OU do to fix the secondary? I think get healthy. Honestly, I mean, I think some of these like baptism by fire situations that some of these kids get in playing before they're ready pays dividends for them later on in their career. I don't know how much is helpful right now, but I think those meaningful snaps right now and where they learn, kind of where they get burned a little bit, but they learn how to play the position a little bit better, will pay dividends. But I think ultimately getting Delarrin Turner-Yell back from a safety perspective, getting your two starting cornerbacks, DJ Graham and Woody Washington back, is going to help immensely as well. So I think those things combined, and just getting some more reps for those younger kids will help fix the secondary. And the other thing is a very solid, consistent pass rush will do wonders in getting that secondary back better than I mean, better to a point to where they were earlier in the season, um, or you know at least where they need to be competitive at a national level. I know that they can be competitive in the Big 12, but they got to be in a better position to um, be in a better position for uh, a national championship run, a playoff run, things like that. Um, I wish 3 years as well, Megan. You're absolutely right. Um, let's see. Yeah, he has to. So you're counting. So just make sure that we're understanding. We're counting this year as one, and then he'll have the 2022 season and then the 2023 season um, that he'll have in the Sooner uniform. And if he continues to play well, then he may move on after that. Yep, just I absolutely agree. I think that's where. Jimmy, we talked a little bit about Marcus Major just a little bit ago, just in terms of there was a question around why he wasn't getting, a lot of carries early on. I think I think that he'll get into the offense a little bit more. I think Jimmy as the season goes on, but I think getting him more reps, he's probably just working scout team and just kind of getting back into the groove and stuff like that. I'm sure he was just immensely focused on his academics and getting himself to a spot where he can get back into the lineup and get back on this team and be eligible. So I think he's a guy that will get back into the rotation. I'm not sure how many carries he'll get, but I think at some point Oklahoma likes to do those two back sets. Oklahoma hasn't really put Kennedy Brooks and Eric Gray in at the same time, just in terms of that split back. They like to use that. They like use that guard tackle zone play. I said that gap scheme play, and they've run it a little bit more, but they've not run it with both of those kids in the game. So maybe when they get him a little bit more ready to play, then I think you'll probably see that a little bit more, and not Lincoln Riley won't be afraid to play those guys a little bit more than they have in the past. So. Ryan, I feel like I've seen more deep passes in the last 6 quarters. You're absolutely right. I think that's one of the things that and I've just seen a lot of people just being concerned with the Oklahoma offense was, Spencer Rattler was not getting the ball downfield. I know if he was just scared of taking chances or what it is, but you got to give Caleb Williams credit. He's got the guts to go to throw that ball deep, and even if it's just letting his guys go up and make a play. You got to have faith and trust in your receivers to go be able to do that, and he's been able to do that the last couple of weeks. So you're absolutely spot on with that comment. Matthew Myers, thanks for joining here. Please, come down deep in the secondary when missing 4 or 5. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Happy the offensive line is getting better. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I was very perplexed with early on in the season, but whatever it is, if it's just the insertion of Caleb Williams into the starting lineup, or if it is just the cohesiveness of them playing together and getting better, but whatever it is, they're definitely playing a lot better, specifically the last 6 quarters. Yep. 2 more years. O-line looked decent tonight. Yeah, I agree. They've consistently got better the last couple of days. Josh Allen can't understand Lincoln's capacity. Rattler is gone. You have to be concerned about your backup, and I think that's all. It's all Lincoln was doing. I think when you look at what he was doing this week, he's trying to do everything he can. Number one, to keep Spencer Rattler interested, because to your point here, Josh, you may need him at some point in the season, not only to keep him interested, just to keep the focus, to keep his focus up, knowing that he could be there anytime, could be thrust back into the starting lineup at any time as well. And I think you hit it on the head as well. For a guy, I mean, I think for everything that Lincoln Riley does, he wants his kids to be successful, even if it's going to other places. He's talked a lot about Tanner Mordecai just in terms of how good he's played this year for SMU, and he's always been a proponent of those guys, even if it doesn't work out at Oklahoma, going on to have successful careers elsewhere. Definitely. So I think you've got to have him ready for all different types situation. 2022 class. If I said 23, my apologies. But yeah, um, hopefully that hopefully that gets him some gets Oklahoma some guys. I think from a recruiting perspective, getting Gabe Dindy was huge. The biggest recruit. I don't know if that was more of an SEC. Oklahoma moving to the SEC was helpful there. I don't know how much Caleb Williams kind of influenced that. But to your point, Oklahoma's got some guys that they need to be able to flip to get back into our side, which there's a long way to go before signing day, and I think they can without a doubt. Throwing deep is what OU does, yeah. And I think it was just weird mentioning the guys. I think of those group, Jalen um, didn't have as much success throwing the ball deep as the other four that you mentioned there, Megan. But yeah, no, absolutely, he is. Um, he's good about getting the ball downfield without a doubt. Um, Yep, stay in the pocket. And I think he does a lot of the things that you just have to nitpick to find some things that he's not doing well right now. And I know there's some QB gurus out there that will pinpoint. Keegan Renault's are really good. If you guys look at his stuff, it does a really good job kind of breaking down some of the Oklahoma tape and some of the Oklahoma quarterback play. But yeah, no, I think he's only going to get better. And I think that's the scary thing and the positive thing for Oklahoma is he's only going to get better from here and be what Oklahoma needs them to be. Yeah, absolutely. Denny was huge, and I think it was one of those things where Oklahoma led on him early, but you thought Texas A&M was getting in the mix, especially when his dad took that pastoral job in College Station. But then when he made his official visit, he didn't commit, so you thought that Oklahoma was in good shape for him, and now when you look at Gentry Williams as the next big guy, he's going to announce his commitment. I believe it's this next week, or not. It's not this next week, the week after, and I think we're gonna like where that goes. I think there was a lot of concern with USC and maybe even Florida getting into the mix a little bit for Gentry Williams, but I think we're going to see some boom news here in the next couple of weeks for Gentry. I would be right now from some of the things that I'm hearing. Excuse me. I would be a little bit surprised and frankly a little disappointed if he doesn't make it to Norman. But I think he'll be there um, for the Sooners. And Megan just absolutely right. It's the best D-Lineman recruit since the things that I was hearing since Tommy Harris and or Gerald McCoy. So um, those are two things that you would look for. Just in terms of those two guys, as good as this guy would be, and you have to think, Megan, some of these D-line recruits, Amari Abor is another guy that Oklahoma's in on. Who's one of the best defensive linemen in the country as well. So you got to think some of these kids that Oklahoma's in on in terms of big time talent. In terms of big time talent that they have, that they're going to be bringing in is Oklahoma's going to lose a lot on the defensive line. I would certainly expect Isaiah Thomas, Nick Benito, Perry Winfrey all to not be here after this year. So you've got some players there. I think Isaiah Coe has done a tremendous job this year. You'll probably insert him more into the starting lineup. So you got some guys there, but you still need some game changers at the defensive line position. So I think Oklahoma has the opportunity to get there. So Ryan, I got your comment here. Let me just while we're on recruiting here. So I think they're right now Oklahoma's number 8 in a 247 composite. I think you get Gentry, you get Omari Abor. I think you have an opportunity to get into that top 5. I think as Monty has mentioned here, Oklahoma needs some wide receiver commits. So Oklahoma has some guys that are some really good game changers for this next season. I think Rayleigh Brown is going to be an instant impact kid. Gavin Sawchuk could be an instant impact kid, depending on what happens with Oklahoma's running backs going into the, kind of going into the, not the portal, but the NFL draft, if specifically Kennedy Brooks. So I absolutely see that needs some depth on the defensive line. Ryan, I agree with you. I like the way, specifically offensively, I like the way this team is trending. I think you looked at this team a couple of weeks ago and said, you have a lot of concern with Oklahoma being able to be good enough on both sides of the ball to win or compete for a national championship. Now I think you've got an offense that's there, and then they'll get better, obviously. But I think you have an offense that is there that can compete for a national championship. Now you just got to get your defense there. I think your defensive line, even though they didn't play extremely well tonight, I think your defensive line is there. But I think we got to get the secondary in order, and I think we'll get there. Just really need to get them healthy and get there. So, um, open field tackling's been a problem all year. It was, it got slightly better there towards the back half of the non-conference slate, but then has been pretty bad for the last 3 games. Started against Kansas State, and then was only worse, obviously, against Texas and then tonight as well. Um, so yeah, I think that the tackling needs to get much better, definitely. Yeah, Megan, and I think just experience. I think for Bowman will get him there. He's just learning to play the ball. I think he's just learning, and as Monty mentioned, he was moved over from another position, maybe a little bit unfairly thrust into action more quickly than maybe he was ready for. So yeah, I think that's a big concern. So you guys are still going strong, 68 or 71 in here a few minutes ago. So let me take a minute to talk to you guys. So since we have so many, a little bit to talk to you guys about what we're doing next week. So one thing that I did with my man Mark Rogers, who runs the national college football channel here. So he's been gracious enough to let me kind of run with this Oklahoma channel. So I think one of the things that I got from some of you guys on Twitter today was really a little bit of disappointment with not having a pod during the day and being so late at night. So apologize for that. But I think what we're going to try to do next week is have a little bit of a marathon pod and really kind of start around the 8 a.m. time frame, 8 or 9, and then go all day long. So I got some guests lined up. I've got a couple that we can kind of talk through the totality of the Oklahoma game against Kansas, which kicks off at 11 a.m. On ESPN next Saturday. But then I've got some national stuff that you guys will be excited for. I've got Georgia, I've got Penn State, I've got UCLA, I've got Tennessee, I've got Army, I've got West Virginia. I've got some other ones that I'm looking at, just having from a national perspective, just having some guests on here. I've got maybe some South Carolina people, South Carolina and Texas A&M. So there's a little bit of Oklahoma flavor, obviously, with South Carolina, which struggled to beat Vanderbilt tonight. So I'm going to try to work on getting somebody from Oklahoma State on here. So we'll kind of preview the Oklahoma State Iowa State. They're at 2:30 after the Oklahoma game. Not really preview, but just kind of talk about it live there. So we're gonna do a full court promotion on this almost every single day. Talking to you about some of the people that we'll have on, and really just exciting just to be on here and talk with you guys about football all day long. So you guys can come in, check it out, come in and leave. For the first time, we'll be able to kind of talk live about Oklahoma. I know that we always come in either before or after the game or midweek, but this week we're gonna do it all day long. So starting around 8 a.m. going until like where we're at now, almost midnight. So it'll be a long day. I'll make sure to get myself prepped and ready to go for next Saturday. So really excited about that. Like I said, we'll have some great guests. I'm hopeful that we'll have around 10 or so guests throughout the full day. But we'll more details on that. But we'll promote that. So make sure that you guys are looking at the notifications and things like that. and we will tweet that out. If you're not already, come follow me at Jason Ray One. We'll have a lot. I'll tag a lot of the folks um, that we're going to have on here, and it'll be fun. Some of it will be serious football talk, and some of it will be just um, shooting the breeze and just talking crap about other teams. We'll certainly, it's an opportunity Texas isn't not on, so we'll talk crap about Texas all week. Maybe Oklahoma State will lose, and we can get an opportunity um, to talk some trash on them as well. So, like I said, come join me, come follow me at Jason Ray One. I'll follow you guys back, absolutely. Um, absolutely as well. So, before we go, Ryan has a comment here. I wanted to address some things nationally. Um, it was absolutely surprising to me. It was kind of funny, Ryan. Me and Mark and our when we talked at 11:30 a.m., which we do every Wednesday. We talked a little bit about, and I said maybe I gave Iowa the kiss of death. I said, it looked like Iowa had almost a cakewalk into the Big Ten championship game, undefeated into the championship game, and they just laid a complete egg today. Not anything that I was expecting from against Purdue. I thought, in a couple of weeks they play Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin has really struggled, um, but I thought there was a chance that would be the game that they would lose. Um, but no, they played bad today, and the upsets just continue to happen each and every week. It's bizarre. It's bizarre to see. I was just going to go through the top 25 today. Like right now, Utah's beating Arizona State, I should say. Um, when you look, obviously Texas top 25 team barely still. Auburn goes and beats Arkansas. LSU beats Florida. Obviously Georgia beats Kentucky. That was kind of expected as well. That's not really necessarily an upset. And then Oregon kind of struggled with Cal. So each and every week, you've got some big time games that has an opportunity to have that upset, and then the next week will be interesting. Like I said, we'll have a lot of the national games covered. We'll have someone to all throughout the day to talk about. So we'll have I talked about Penn State. They face Illinois. We'll have a Penn State. One of my one of my favorite people, Maggie Yarnell, who is with us on Last Word on College Football, is going to join us. Wake Forest, one of the best teams in the country right now, specifically out of the ACC, goes to Army in a very interesting game, 11 a.m. as well. We'll have some stuff on that. Oregon goes to UCLA 2:30 p.m. We've got my man Tony Siracusa, who helps me along with Maggie manage the Last Word on College Football site that you guys have seen some of my work on. He'll be there with us in the morning, kind of previewing Oregon UCLA. And then in the 2:30 slot, we'll have some live talking about Oklahoma State and Iowa State. I've got my man Brandon Eisenman, I think, that's going to come join us for LSU and Ole Miss. And then we've got some Tennessee, Alabama stuff with Mike Lavelle, who was who was previously part of Last Word on College Football, moved on to other things now. And so we'll have a lot of other stuff. Like I said, South Carolina, Texas A&M. We'll probably get into some USC, Notre Dame stuff at the end of the day. So it'll be a really, really exciting day. So make sure you guys join us next week all day long. We'll have a great have a great time. And I gave Monty a little pub, so he's doing the same. I appreciate it, Monty. So you guys have a great night and a blessed, wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Boomer Sooner, guys.